Hi guys, my name is Chloe, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I read in November. So in November I managed to read 5 books in the end, so I think one more than last month, but November flew by for me. I honestly thought I read most of these in October. November seemed like it didn't really exist, and I honestly can't believe it's December. So I am happy with the 5 books that I got read in this month. So yeah, I'm just gonna jump straight into those now. So the first book that I finished in November was an ebook, and this was The Forgotten Phantom by Kathryn and Kingsley. This is the first book in her new creature feature series, and this is a series of standalone novellas based on different monsters. So this one was based on Phantom of the Opera, the next one's going to be based on a vampire, I think, and then there are also like mummies and other creatures in there as well, so I'm excited to check the rest out. But anyway, The Forgotten Phantom, I gave this one 4 stars and I really enjoyed it. It's a paranormal romance. It's Kathryn and Kingsley, so she always does the like dark paranormal romances, which I really enjoy. So this one was a Phantom of the Opera retelling, and we're following Christine. Not Christine from Phantom. This one is set in modern day, so it's a new character. She's just called Christine and sort of looks like her, and she is part of this institute that investigates paranormal activity and creatures and stuff, and so she's sent to the theatre to investigate the Phantom, and he's real and he's actually a phantom now. So he is actually a ghost and not just a person living in the theatre this time, and so she meets him, and yeah, the romance and the story basically goes from there. I really enjoyed this book actually. I loved how it was able to sort of like twist the original story a bit, make it appropriate for the modern day setting. I loved seeing all the characters, that was really great. So Christine was pretty cool. Instead of becoming a singer, she actually was a violin player, which was a nice twist, and it was really interesting to see her teach the Phantom all about electronics and phones and technology and stuff like that. That was really amusing. And then I just loved how much Eric the Phantom hated this character called Raoul still, so those interactions were just amazing. And yeah, I think I enjoyed this one more because I am a fan of the original work, and whilst it's not quite as good, I did enjoy it for those character interactions and little bits that really made me like smile because of the original. Otherwise I think this probably would have been a 3 or a 3.5 possibly for me if I wasn't a fan of the original work. And yeah, this one got a 4 because in places it felt a little too fanficky for me versus like a proper retelling. It's hard to explain, like retellings sort of are more their own thing, whereas this one felt kind of the same in places, so that's the only reason why this didn't get 5 stars. And it's also quite short, so I didn't really attach to the characters too much, although Eric was great. And yeah, basically another great book with another hot ghost, so can't complain. The next book that I finished in November was Katheryn Howard the Tainted Queen by Alison Weir. This is the 5th book in the 6 Tudor Queens series, and in this one we are following Katheryn Howard, who is Henry VIII's 5th wife. So yeah, there isn't really too much to say about this book. We follow her life before she meets Henry, while she's with Henry, and then we get to follow her all the way up to her execution. And yeah, this one was really interesting because Katheryn was quite young. I think she was 19 when she met Henry, possibly 19 or even like 2021 when she died, I can't quite remember. So we got to cover such a short amount of time throughout this book, whereas the other ones, the queens who lived longer, you sort of have to rush past certain years and it's more this happened and this happened and this happened, but this one we got to spend with Katheryn really getting to know her, which was a nice change. And yeah, I really liked this one. I really enjoyed the ending again. The execution, it was harrowing to read, but really well done. And I love how Alison Weir's been able to round out all of these books leading with most of the queen's deaths, and how like well written it is, and how sad and heartbreaking it is at the same time. That's always been done really well, so she didn't let me down there. And yeah, just very good. The only reason this is getting 4 and not any higher is because I still think the first 3 books in this series is the strongest, because those 3 queens overlap quite a lot and they feel almost like a first trilogy, and then this is a second trilogy sort of thing, and the second trilogy hasn't been as linked throughout the books. Like Cleves came along, then Kathryn Howard was pretty much straight after. There wasn't much overlap, which is another thing that I found really interesting in the first trilogies, where you could like compare how events played out based on whose point of view you were following. You could do that in the first 3. But yeah, glad to get another one out the way, and I've got one more left in this series, so fingers crossed that I can read this one in December. The next book that I finished in November was probably my favourite book of the month, and this was The Last Ever After by Soman Chainani. This is the 3rd book in the School for Good and Evil series, so I can't really say too much about this one because it would just be massive spoilers. But in the School for Good and Evil series, we follow Sophie and Agatha as they're sent to the School for Good and Evil. Sophie thinks she's going to join the School for Good and become a princess, and Agatha is pretty convinced she's going to get thrown into the School for Evil, but that isn't the case, and they end up in opposite schools. So we basically follow them as they navigate their new school life, making friends and enemies and learning magic and history and all of those things. And yeah, every book's just been really good, and it's followed like a nice different story and like almost put a twist on what we knew before, which was really good, and this one did not disappoint. This has been my favourite in the series so far, and the first one to get 5 stars. I really loved this book. The character development in this book was especially incredible, and I actually liked Sophie and Agatha in equal parts in this one, whereas in the previous 2 books Sophie's character has annoyed me a little just in the way she's written, and I think that's intentional. It just bugs me. Yeah, I also really liked Agatha's and Tedros's relationship in this. It felt very real. They're teenagers, they're arguing a lot, they're at each other's throats quite a lot of the time, and that was just really realistic and nice to see. We get those moments as well as all the nice cuddly moments as well. That was really great. I can't say too much, but I loved that we get to see some of the original fairy tale characters in this one, so like Cinderella, mentions of Snow White, Peter Pan I think, and my favourite Merlin. He was great in this one, so especially loved those character interactions. Those were amazing. And yeah, there was one moment towards the end of the book where I nearly even cried, and I can't even tell you which point that was because it would just be major spoilers. But yeah, it was related to a death, and I won't say more than that. And yeah, this one's great. And yeah, this is the first trilogy in the School for Good and Evil series, and then I think the next 3 are kind of linked to each other, so they're kind of in 2 separate trilogies but part of the same series, if that makes any sense. So I'm hopefully gonna read the last 3 next year, because yeah, so far they've been amazing, and yeah, each one's just got a little bit better. The next book that I finished in November was another ebook, and this one was called The Vixen's Deceit by Nikki Sloane. This one is also part of a series made up of individual stories, I think. From what I had read about it, like in terms of synopses, I thought it was going to be a paranormal, smutty, haunted house book. And I was very disappointed at what this story was actually about, and in the end I gave this one 2.5 stars. So in this one we follow Tyler, and he is a journalist, and he is sent to the Void, which is a haunted house experience up in Scotland, in one of the castles up there. And so it's not really a proper haunted house. He's sent there to be scared by like actors and stuff like that. And yeah, we spend most of the book following him as he goes through different scenes in the house. And yeah, there wasn't really romance. He spent part of the book pining after one of the girls in the elevators because he thought she was hot, but there wasn't any chemistry and romance, so didn't like that. And there wasn't really much ghosts or anything spooky, so also disappointed by that. But yeah, things I did like about this book, it did feel to me much like a horror game. It's really hard to explain, but in horror games you're in one area of the game, you face an enemy, you navigate them, and then something else comes up and then you have to deal with them. This book basically did that. So Tyler at first ran into a room of cultists who were after him, and then he got into the second room, and then he was approached by this creepy doctor who wanted to inject him and stuff like that. And it felt like a horror game, which I kind of liked. I just didn't expect it. And I will give it kudos because it was kind of creepy, it was kind of horror-y. So as a horror little short story, I guess it's okay, but definitely not as a like paranormal romance, which I was expecting and what I thought this book was going to be. And yeah, the only supernatural elements came in right at the end, and they were very rushed and didn't really fit in with the rest of the plot. So yeah, I didn't even bother reading the epilogue with this one either, because I just didn't care about the romance. Well, the romance in this book, I didn't care about how those characters ended, so I skipped the epilogue and yeah, just read the first 120 pages or so. It was a very short novella. But yeah, this one also, it was very weird. For most of the book, it just felt like a very lucid dream as well. It was kind of trippy and it just didn't make sense. There wasn't plot really, apart from him walking through this house and then, yeah, like I said, gawking at the girls. So yeah, very disappointed by that one and very bitter. So sorry about the rant. And the last book that I read in November was an audio book, and that was Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. This one was a lot better than the previous book, and in the end I gave this one 4 stars. I really enjoyed this one. So in this one we are following Wallace after he dies of a heart attack, and he is brought to Charon's Crossing by the Reaper, which is this tea shop run by Hugo. And Hugo and his other friends there are basically there to help Wallace come to terms with being dead and to help him move on so he can be at peace, basically. And this one was just so wonderful. It was so whimsical and cozy and heartwarming, while still being very serious and severe at times, because a load of deep topics were covered in this one. So definitely check out the trigger warnings if you want to read this book. Off the top of my head, this one deals with death, murder, suicide, grief, and other emotions such as anger and stuff like that. So yeah, it was really interesting to dive into those emotions in lots of different situations and meet the characters who were experiencing different things. That was really, really interesting. Yeah, I loved the LGBTQ plus rep in this as well. I loved Wallace and Hugo's relationship in this book. That was really nice. And yeah, one of my favourite parts of this book was the little ghost interactions that happened throughout the book. So Wallace is a ghost, but then he would mess around with bits of furniture and stuff eventually and like knock things over, and it just reminded me a bit of BBC's Ghosts, which is a show that I really like, so that was great. And then also there's this lady who comes in claiming to be a psychic, completely forgotten her name, and then the ghosts just mess around with her and scare her, and that's great. Those were probably some of my favourite moments in the book. And yeah, so I really enjoyed this one, and I did prefer it to House in the Cerulean Sea, which I think I gave 3 or 3.5 stars to, so it's a step up from that from me. And it didn't get any higher just because I didn't get that 5-star feeling. It's really hard to explain. I didn't really feel too attached to any of the characters, and I feel like this is definitely a character-driven book, and I probably would have rated it higher if I was slightly more attached to the characters, because a lot happens to them. But yeah, otherwise, very good book. Would recommend the audiobook as well. The narrator was really great, and the different voices really helped immerse me in the story as well. So that was another great thing about the experience of reading this one. So that's it. Those were all of the books that I read in November. Let me know down below what your favourite read for the month was, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!